Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I've got something really interesting for you today. We will be looking at React server components and how Next.js uses them to make things work faster. So, without wasting any more time, let's dive straight in. So, React server components are a feature introduced by the React team to let React components run on the server instead of the browser. Firstly, traditional React apps ship all components, logic plus UI, to the browser, even if some parts don't need to be interactive. Also, with server components, those parts render on the server, and only the resulting HTML plus minimal serialized data gets sent to the client. Finally, the client doesn't need to download or execute JavaScript for those server-rendered parts. Now, some benefits of these include smaller bundle sizes, faster page loads, and direct access to server resources without exposing secrets to the client. So here are the key reasons why Next.js uses React server components by default. 1. Server components allow fetching data directly inside components without needing client-side fetching or separate API routes. 2. If a component is server-only, it ships no JavaScript to the client, reducing the bundle size and improving performance significantly. Third, you can render most of the UI on the server and only mark interactive parts with the use client directive. This keeps interactivity where needed while keeping bundles small. You will require this to use the React-provided client-side hooks like the useState, useEffect, and more. We will be looking at this in a while. Now, finally, server components integrate with React's suspense, enabling a streaming rendering so the server can progressively send UI as data arrives. This improves time to first byte and overall user experience. So let's take a look at the use client directive. So first, we can go ahead to the testing route and check out this file that we created for this route. Inside here, we need to define, let's say, another component that needs some client-side interactivity. So we will make a components folder first, and then make a testcomponent.tsx in here. Let's just import useState and define a state counter. This state will be used to maintain the number of clicks on this div. We can simply return a div showing the count for this. We can also go ahead and make an onClick function for this. Inside the onClick, we will be changing the state. If you are not familiar with React's useState, then I would suggest you first learn the basic concept of React and how it works before diving into Next.js, since Next uses React as a complete framework. So once we are done with this test component, we can go ahead and import that inside our page.tsx for the testing route, and render that beside our existing content. We can just move this inside a span and place our new component here. Now, if we save and move to our testing route, you can see that it throws an error, and it says, "You're importing a component that needs useState. This React hook only works in a client component. To fix, mark the file, or its parent, with the useClient directive." Hence, we are clearly being told to define this component as a client-side code since it requires client interactive things. So we will go ahead and use the useClient directive inside of our test component. This tells Next to treat this as a client-side component so we do not have to render it on the server. Once we do this and refresh, you can see the content rendered exactly as intended. If I click on the div, you can see the count being increased as well, which tells us that the interaction is working just as perfect. So that was the use client directive for you. So here's a summary of the important points that we have discussed. If you would like, you can take a quick note of this. Now that we know of how Next.js renders components client-side and also static route generation, we will next look into dynamic routing, which is a very important part of complex applications in Next.js. So till then, take care. Bye-bye.